We're here at a special spot interview of Neverendingpanel.com at the WesterCon 63 Pasadena Hilton with author Barbara Hambly. She is an author of historical fiction, fantasy, science fiction, graphic novels, comics. You can keep the list going. It's pretty spectacular. Also, the Benjamin January series.
Yes,
these are historical mysteries.
Historical whodunits.
Historical
yes.
whodunits.
What history period?
They take place in New Orleans about 30 years before the Civil War. So Benjamin January is a free black man in a society that looks upon black men as just, slaves in waiting.
Gaslight and racism.
Yes, gaslight and racism. So that's, it's basically solving crimes when the entire world around you is a crime.
Got it. That's pretty cool. And I understand you also have established a new web presence.
Yes. Many years ago, I did a number of fantasy series for Del Rey. Many of these series are out of print, but a lot of my fans really liked the characters. So I thought, okay, I will take the characters from these old Del Rey series and I will write short fiction about them, put them up on my website, barbarahambly.com. It's a separate section.
BarbaraHambly.com.
Yes,
yeah,
right up there.
Right up there.
It's a separate section of the website called The Further Adventures Of.
Okay.
And it's $5 a download. You can get it in PDF, you can get it in EPUB, you can get it in Mobi, and
that's so cool because I didn't even know half the things she said. She's tragically hipper than I am, and that scares me.
It is tragic.
It is.
It is indeed tragic.
So what do they get for their $5?
They get a short story about an original short story about the characters from these fantasy series, trilogies or quadrilogies or whatever that I wrote back in the 80s and 90s, and it's what's continuing to happen to the characters who didn't get killed at the end of the trilogy.
It's a fascinating model, too, because, of course, Stephen King famously tried the I'm going to sell you parts of chapters, like 10 or 15 years ago, and then he abandoned it. But I know now that the business model is moving kind of towards authors bringing their works online. So I'm curious, how is that? I mean, you have a great reputation, so it's probably not the norm, but how's it working for you in doing this?
It is working quite well. I have a phenomenal site mistress. I could not...
Site mistress.
I could not program a story if you held a gun on me.
Got it.
But she's put together this website. It works for my type of fiction and for the people who are fans, because I write very character-driven stories, particularly my fantasies, very character-driven, and the people who were fans of my work, I guess, really got to love the characters. And so when these series went out of print, then my fans were going, well, what happened to Ingold the Wizard? And it's like, well, this is what happened to him.
The continuing adventures of Ingold the Wizard.
The Further Adventure, that's why it's called The Further Adventures Of.
Perfect sense.
I hope to be able to, because I'm doing so many other things, including teaching.
Right, history, I understand, right?
Yes, because the college that I work for decided that it was inappropriate for me to teach creative writing because I did not have an MFA.
Oh,
and I said,
God.
How ghastly stupid of me. I got my
God.
degree in history. And they said, oh, you want to teach Western Civ? Sure.
Let me get this straight. The person who has written who has creatively written to the point of publication
50 novels.
50 novels.
Not counting the Saturday morning cartoons.
Not counting. Has creatively written for television, print, magazine, across the board. Somehow, because comics, you don't have a degree,
you're not good enough to teach.
No, can't teach creative writing.
Can't teach creative writing.
How many years ago you got a degree in history? Then
my students' parents were not born when I got that degree, and yet.
But then, okay, that you can teach.
I love teaching history.
Yeah.
They sit out there with that little deer in the headlights look in their eyes, and
great.
I love teaching history.
And I
I
have
will
to tell
teach you what really happened.
History was my favorite course in school because I bombed at math and all of that, but history to me was always storytelling of a different sort.
And it is all storytelling.
Yeah.
It is. Periodically, I'll bring in swords and shields and
Right.
explain Greek fighting techniques to them and
Nice.
things like that.
Oh, you gotta
and they're
go to-
all,
Anyways, Eitan's doing a weapons seminar tomorrow. It's kind of
oh,
fun.
cool.
Weapons and armor for the fantasy writer.
Oh,
Just the
excellent.
basic physics.
You know, that's something that many fantasy writers, they need to learn that. They need to learn, can you actually drive a car while wearing a bustle? How do you use a chamber pot while wearing a bustle and a corset?
Most about how to use a chamber pot.
The technical aspects.
The technical, the sheer physics of it.
The sheer physics of it, yes.
Quick question back to you in terms of your Barbara Hamilton name. Why?
That's a very long story that I'm not going to go into now.
Okay,
But
and moving on to the next question. Okay.
no,
I'm
Barbara
kidding.
Hamilton is the name under which I write stories, murder mysteries. There's a subgenre of murder mysteries that, famous historical character as the sleuth.
Right.
And because I had written a serious historical novel about Abigail Adams,
Right.
I thought, my God, she would make a great sleuth. She was brilliant. She would have been a lawyer herself if she had not been constantly either pregnant or nursing.
Or fighting off smallpox or
Fighting off.
Right.
Actually, well, that's another story. In any case, so I started writing. I've got 2 murder mysteries and a third one that I'm working on under the name of Barbara Hamilton, of which Abigail Adams is our famous historical
Love it.
sleuth.
And I understand you have a vampire novel coming out?
Yes, Blood Maidens, which basically it takes place in 1911 in St. Petersburg, Russia, and investigates the problem of what do Russian vampires in St. Petersburg do during the White Nights.
Oh, that's great.
The sun goes down for 15 minutes. Oh, sorry, the sun comes.
No, it never gets dark enough for a vampire to be out. Because you can read a newspaper outdoors,
That's
and
great.
that's
No,
enough
that's
light
I
to
never
fry
even
a
thought
vampire.
about that.
There's some because I know, according to some of the legends, some vampires, as long as the sun's not up, they can function.
Well, that's the fun thing about writing vampire fiction, is you can pick where you want to set.
Just tell me they don't sparkle.
They do not. My vampires
good.
do not sparkle.
All right, good.
My vampires do not sparkle. But you can pick where you want to set your dials for a vampire's powers and a vampire's limitations.
We have a question from Soundman Tim.
So you mentioned that you've done some Saturday morning cartoons, and I was just curious as to what those were and how you got to do that.
Oh, that's a long, disgraceful
And we
story.
only have a minute and a half
And we
left.
only have a minute and a half. But I did He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I did a very nice series called Mask Force. Another series called Jace and the Wheeled Warriors. And a real prize called Spiral Zone.
I've heard of that one too.
Yeah, well, some of that was me, a lot of it wasn't.
That's really interesting. It's, I never knew that about.
It was an interesting experience.
So how is it, in our wrap-up question, that you ended up becoming a writer? Like, where did it start from? Did you know from a young kid that's what it was going to be?
I knew, before I knew the alphabet, before I had learned the alphabet, I was storyboarding stories.
Got it.
So this is something I have always wanted to do.
Got it.
I imagine my life would be very different if I had not done it, but I did.
Barbara Hambly, thank you so much for being on
Thank
NeverendingPanel.com.
you.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Eitan, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're out.